What's up guys, welcome to Voicey here. This is your host, Captain Zach, and today's subreddit is r/MaliciousCompliance. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode. This story is called "The Time I Cost the Owner's Son His Job and Possibly Ownership of His Family's Company." So I work in sales for a family-owned business, a large family-owned business, but nonetheless owned by one family. I've been with this business for quite some time, many years in fact. Now, it's important to describe my pay plan. Obviously, I don't want to give too much info as I don't want the company identified. The pay plan is base salary plus commission plus accelerators for going over objective. The company is divided into regions, which is overseen by a senior VP, and those regions are divided into markets, which are overseen by a VP, and the markets are divided into teams, which are overseen by a manager, and then within those teams, you got territories, which are assigned to sales reps. Sales objectives are decided by the big boys at the top, and those objectives are then cut into smaller chunks and handed down the line. I have worked my way up and got one of the best markets a sales rep can have in my company. The reason for this is because my territory, which I call a market, is geographically isolated from other parts of our company and has about enough business for 1.5 salespeople. Problem being, it's awfully hard to hire half a person, so I get the benefit of getting an objective that's quite easy to meet and which naturally results in me making a very healthy living, and I'm quite happy with this arrangement. Also, our employment contract with the company, which is also our commission agreement, clearly states, and has for many years, that our sales objectives rise and fall based upon the number of salespeople in our market. So if we hire a salesperson, that salesperson takes a little bit of the objective away from everyone else. If a salesperson quits until that role is fulfilled, objective goes up for everyone. Also, we get bonuses for going over objective, and at the biggest bonus mark, we double our commissions. Now, the owner of my company apparently told his son if his son wants to run this company one day, his son needs to successfully work all the support level jobs for at least 6 months. That's on the admin side, and be successful at each level of the sales side for 2 years each. If the son is successful at that, the reins and control of the company will be given to the son. Start January 1st of 2019, the son becomes my sales manager for his first of 2 years as a sales manager. Early in the year, he sits down with me and basically asks me what I expect to do for business. I tell him I'll most likely finish at around 130 to 140% of objective for the year. He tells me he thinks he can double the sales if he hires a new salesperson. I explain to him that I don't see how that'd be possible and that if he hired a salesperson, sure, the company might sell a bit more product, but they will also be paying an additional salary and will end up paying more out in commission. He tells me that's none of my concern and that if I can't commit to doubling my sales, which is a ridiculous ask considering I've grown this market a great deal already, that he's gonna put in another sales rep. I tell him that it's his decision to make, but he should consult with the VP first to see if that's a wise move. Obviously, since you're reading this, we can all guess what happened. He hired another salesperson to give me a bit of competition. I promptly ensured that my objective was cut in half. If this smart-ass, Ivy League educated silver spoon child is gonna make my life a bit more difficult, then I'm gonna get paid more. Shortly after all this went down in the month of January 2019, I was speaking to my VP and I reminded him that if I didn't secure a single additional order for the entire year with my objective being cut in half, I was at 108% of objective based upon business that I had carried over the year prior. My vice president smiled and said, "Sounds like you're gonna make a ton of money, and this new manager is gonna screw up his payroll budget." Keep in mind that had this not have happened my previous year, business would have only gotten me to 54% of my yearly objective. I started the year with 2% away from my first commission accelerator. I knew that 2019 would be my biggest money-making year ever, and I was gonna freaking blow it out of the water. I went back and looked at my sales for the year, and here's how my year went. End of January 1st, I was at 38% of my objective for the year. End of February, I was at 74% of my objective for the year. End of March, I was at 109% of my objective for the year. End of April, I was at 149% of my objective, and for the first time in many years of being with this company, hit my maxed first and second level accelerators. I was now earning 130% commission. End of May, I was at 175% of my objective and had maxed out my 3rd level accelerator, and was into my 4th and was now earning 150% commission. June, 202% of my yearly objective, I had officially hit my max accelerator and was now earning 200% commission. For the rest of the year, this was going to be the case. June was also my mid-year review. To my surprise, the owner attended my mid-year review and it was all positive. I was doing a fantastic job, and there was a lot of talk about how much I was earning and how much I would earn. To which the owner said, "I've never seen a sales rep get to 200% commission as fast as you." I smiled and said, "I know, it's a great year." He asked me, "How do you think my son is doing as a manager?" Now, to be fair, I was very experienced and very rarely needed my sales manager, and the son had been doing the job that he was supposed to be doing, and I smiled and said, "Your son is the best thing to ever happen to me. I've never made so much money with this company. I love it." The owner smirked and said, "I'm sure you are very happy with him." And I was given a good review. Later on, in a private conversation with my VP admitted that the owner was freaking furious because our region's payroll budget was going to be blown out of the water because of not only the decision his son made in regards to my market, but other markets as well, and that the sales overall hadn't increased as much as the cost of payroll had increased. And for the first time in our company history, there was a good chance our market would actually end up with a net loss of profit due to the increased cost of payroll. Apparently, the son had increased the size of all teams under his control with the thought being, more salespeople, more sales, but didn't factor in the cost. Back to my sales. July, 218%. I went on vacation. Kinda regret this, shoulda canceled that vacation and sold more. August, 241%. September, 274%. October, 301%. November, 319%. December, 331%. The year was over. In total, I had sold about 17% more than what I had expected. The extra money was a motivator for me, and I had banked a ton more money. Let's just say I no longer have a mortgage payment because of 2019. I did lose some business to the new rep, who really struggled. So here we sit in January of 2020. I now have a new sales manager. For some reason, the son isn't in charge anymore. Wonder why? The sales rep that we had hired to compete against me was actually a very good sales rep, but he didn't make what he wanted and we transferred him to another market. And apparently, we let go of a lot of excess hires. Or old employees had quit, and we are back down to the same amount of salespeople as we had started 2019 with. My objective is back to where it was in 2018, and I expect to make significantly less than I did in 2019. It is what it is. The rumor is, the son is not working in any official capacity with the business, and the owner, his dad, is debating the next step for his son. And yes, our region, for the first time in our company's history, posted an overall loss after everything was said and done. And it's been attributed to the increase in payroll costs due to veteran sales reps benefiting from a lower objective due to the increased sales staff. I did send an email to the son's company email address. It was returned saying that the email is no longer in service. Dang, that guy was bawling for a little bit. I don't have much to say about this other than that, if you're starting a new job or something and you're trying to make a big decision like that, I think it would be best to consult, people who have a bit more experience for advice regarding your decision. Because with a solution that obvious, there might be obvious reasons why people haven't gone with such an obvious solution. Obviously, I'm not saying to listen to them unconditionally. You gotta make your own decisions, but I'm just saying it might help to get other people's opinions and heed them a little bit. This story's called, "We'll Just Switch to the Hot Site." I once worked in the IT department for a company that managed some utilities and infrastructure. They had multiple facilities throughout their state and some extensive redundancy measures in place to keep the buildings connected in case of an emergency. One of the most important of these measures was their hot site. a backup facility that housed a replica of their computer network infrastructure. The hot site was located in a separate building from the main data server. So even if the main building was knocked offline, the hot site would still be available to take over operations. Of course, simply having the equipment and policies to recover from an emergency aren't enough. So the company also had an emergency preparedness committee with representatives from several key departments. The committee held regular simulated emergency drills wherein a member would write and direct an emergency scenario and the others would rehearse the process of recovering from it. The IT department's contributions to these activities were frequently marginalized by the rest of the committee, who firmly believed that the only appropriate way to handle any computer problem was just to activate the hot site. After all, it is a complete functional replica of our main systems. Why bother doing anything else when the problem can instantly be solved by simply plugging in a different computer? Well, the thing is that switching to our hot site was easier said than done. Think of it like the spare tire in your car. It's there if you need it, but it doesn't automatically replace a flat tire. You need to spend some time and effort to take the old one off and put the new one on. And once you finish your road trip, you generally want to get the tire properly replaced rather than continuing to use the spare. And if you're having engine problems, you don't solve it by putting on a different tire, and so on. The point is that a hot site doesn't solve every problem. And even if it does, switching to ours in particular would take some time. The IT representatives explain that every time, but were always ignored. Finally, one of the network engineers was selected to lead one of the emergency drills, and this guy was fed up with everybody else always suggesting the hot site as a solution. Once the committee had taken their seats to hear what crisis they would be averting that day, the network engineer informed them that the building they currently occupied had just been demolished by a storm, and none of the computer systems there remained. Time to activate the hot site. He grabbed his stuff from the table and left the building. And at that moment, all of the other departments realized that they had no clue how to even get to the hot site. The other IT representatives, being directly responsible for the upkeep of the facility, knew where to go, and were out the door only moments after the network engineer. Everybody else was considerably less prepared to relocate to a different building. If they had looked out the window as the IT people left, they might have seen which direction they had turned out of the parking lot, but nothing more. After all, the hot site is designed to be isolated from anything that would damage the main facility, so it is located a fair distance away. The last of the Emergency Preparedness Committee arrived several hours after the IT department had all arrived on site. Not wanting to admit that they had no clue where they were going, they had no better option than to drive from one maintenance building to the next across the state, hoping that their next destination happened to house the backup facility. By this point, the drill had taken much longer than the schedule had originally allowed, and the network engineer called it off, noting that the site would probably be just about ready to be brought online if they had actually bothered to start setting it up. They didn't, of course, since that would have disrupted the entire network. The IT department wasn't allowed to direct another drill for quite some time after that, but at least everybody else was much more reluctant to suggest the hot site as a catch-all solution. It's weird, you'd figure that people would want to listen to the engineers in a case of an emergency, because guess what? Engineers, they're smart people. It's their job to be ingenuitive, so yes, you want the engineers to be at the head of every freaking disaster thing. At least that's my opinion. And you know what? My opinion will be listened to because guess what? I'm not an engineer. Ha, I just hacked the system, yo. This story's called Maliciously Complied and Locked My Boss Out of His Own Home. I used to work as a property manager for a semi-large company in a small city. Among the usual duties of a property manager, we were also responsible for after-hours maintenance calls. Originally, we were paid for 3 hours of overtime to cover the phone calls we answer and paid an additional $80 for any call-outs we have to attend ourselves. The entire team rotated the phone between us, so we only had the emergency phone for one weekend every 2 months. The phone was an after-hours maintenance line for over 800 properties, so you can imagine how busy it would get, but the extra pay helped the blow of losing your weekend. This was not a problem until our boss wanted to crack down on overtime hours, stating, "I very much doubt you are working 3 hours whilst you have the emergency phone." His new rule was for each staff member to document when and who called, and you would be paid an hour of regular time each call. But under no circumstances are you to attend any issues yourself. This includes unlocking doors for tenants who are locked out of their property. He enforced that the tenant must pay for a locksmith to attend and let themselves in. This angered many of our clients and caused us to be constantly abused over the phone by our tenants, as they had to pay $300 for a locksmith. This is where the malicious compliance began. We indeed documented all our calls, which instead of paying each employee $100 for 3 hours, he ended up having to pay us $500 or more each weekend due to the amount of calls we would actually take. But it doesn't stop there. What I should probably mention is that our company can provide accommodation for our more higher staff at a fraction of the cost you would normally pay. The manager in question was in such accommodation, and lo and behold, he managed to lock himself out of his apartment at 11 p.m. on a Friday night. "Hello? OP, I've locked myself out of my apartment. You need to collect the spare keys and come to my door." "I'm very sorry, manager, but I cannot do that." Excuse me? Why not?" "Unfortunately, you have instructed me not to attend any callouts under any circumstances. I can, however, send you through the number of our preferred locksmith to come let you in." After a few choice words, the manager hung up and phoned a locksmith. Let's just say after he had to fork out $300 for an after-hours locksmith, he changed our ability to attend callouts. Anytime I hear stories of predatory management styles, it never really works out in the way that management hoped it would, so I'm curious, does it ever work out? Predatory management makes workers unhappy, and having your workers unhappy, I feel like, eventually bites you in the ass. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode.